Hey guys, tonight we're sailing into the flickering candlelight of the 18th century, where a little boy with a really big name, Napoleon Bonaparte, is about to cause a lot of noise in the history books. You're trudging through the olive groves of Corsica, salt wind in your face, goat bells clanging in the distance, and the air tinged with wood smoke and rebellion. The year is 1769, and you've just arrived in Ajaccio, a scrappy little port town nestled in the rocky spine of the island. Corsica isn't exactly the center of the universe. It's a wild, mountainous speck in the Mediterranean that's been tossed between empires like a political hot potato. Just months before your birth, France scooped the island up from the fading grip of Genoa. So technically, you're French now. But good luck convincing your neighbors Corsicans aren't known for letting go of a grudge, especially against new landlords. You're born into the Bonaparte family, minor Italian-descended nobility with just enough social status to afford proper boots, but not quite enough to avoid political headaches. Your father, Carlo, is clever, educated, and very ambitious. He cozies up to the new French administration, a move that earns him a law degree, some tax exemptions, and a whole lot of side-eye from his fiercely independent Corsican peers. Your mother, Letizia, is the steel in the family spine, strict, sharp-tongued, and somehow raising 8 children while still managing to glare you into submission with one eyebrow. You, Napoleon, are the second child, awkward, bookish, intense. You're not the golden boy of the village. Other kids speak better French. They mock your accent. You sulk. You read. You plot. You listen to tales of ancient heroes and dream of armies under your command. You're also painfully aware that Corsica is no place to launch an empire. It's the kind of place where political dreams go to stub their toes on rocks and retire as poets. But here's your ticket out. Your father pulls strings to get you a scholarship to the French mainland. It's not charity, it's imperial strategy. France wants to turn you into a loyal officer. You're barely 9 when you're packed off to the Royal Military School in Brienne-le-Château. One last salty Corsican breeze, one final glare at the mountains that raised you, and you're off. A small boy with oversized dreams boarding a boat to a country that barely considers him one of their own. Let's buzz here for a second because honestly, you probably won't survive this. Not in the literal sense yet. But you're a poor island kid with a weird name and worse manners being dropped into the snob factory of French aristocracy. Your clothes are out of date, your accent is ridiculous, and your social skills are under construction. Picture dropping a homesick hedgehog into a finishing school and expecting it to waltz. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm always curious. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You spend your early years torn between 2 worlds. In Corsica, you're seen as a little too French. In France, you're absolutely Corsicanprically, proud, and always slightly out of step. But even at Brienne, you're already showing signs of the stubborn brilliance that will one day change the continent. You're obsessed with order, discipline, and you guessed it, war. You build snow fortresses during winter and command your fellow students like a tiny general with freezing fingers and grand ideas. Historical fact, you were so good at math and artillery theory that it caught the attention of your instructors. You were practically born to aim cannons. Quirky tidbit, as a child, you hated dancing. Like, passionately. You once reportedly sulked in a corner at a party while everyone else waltzed, muttering about how pointless it was. Nude. But underneath the sulks and the statistics lies something sharper. You're taking notes, always taking notes. You scribble down observations about military strategy, politics, history. Even as a teenager, you're dreaming in the language of empires, and you haven't even fired your first musket yet. Historians still argue whether young Napoleon truly believed in Corsican independence at first or whether it was just a convenient mask for his ambition. After all, you wrote letters praising the Corsican freedom fighter Pasquale Paoli, and then turned right around and backed French rule once it suited your goals. Opportunistic, strategic. That debate's been brewing for over 2 centuries. But for now, you're still a student, sitting alone in a chilly dormitory, muttering in Italian under your breath and ignoring the boys who tease your accent. You've already decided you're smarter than most of them. You're probably right. Soon, you'll graduate and receive your commission, You'll trade textbooks for sabers. And the world, though it doesn't know it yet, is about to hear your name loud and clear. Section 2. You're 16 years old now, which is young by most standards unless you're Napoleon Bonaparte, in which case you're already a commissioned officer in the French army. Yep, while most teens are busy figuring out how to talk to girls or survive acne, you're learning how to command artillery and deal with cranky garrison commanders. Your uniform's a bit oversized, your boots still squeak, but you've got that unmistakable glint in your eye kind that says, one day, I'm going to run this whole circus. You start your military career at Valence, a sleepy provincial town in southeastern France. It's quiet, which means boring, so you fill the void with books, writing, and long walks where you probably plot elaborate battle strategies and rehearse monologues about destiny. Your letters home are moody, poetic, and occasionally scathing. And yes, you still hate dancing. Some things never change. Now, this is where things get spicy. Back in Corsica, things aren't going well. You head home on leave and reconnect with Pasquale Paoli, the aging Corsican revolutionary you once idolized. Remember him? Big hair, bigger ideas, wanted Corsican independence. Well, turns out he doesn't trust you, calls you to French. You and your family get tangled up in the local drama, siding with the French once again. This doesn't endear you to the islanders. In fact, you kind of burned your Corsican bridges. That's okay, you were never meant to stay small. By 1793, you're back in uniform, and France is a mess. The revolution is in full swing. Heads are rolling, titles are disappearing, and anyone with even a whiff of aristocracy is either dead or pretending to be a baker. You, dear Napoleon, are quietly climbing. You latch onto the Jacobins, radical revolutionaries, and even write political essays defending their cause. Sure, you're not exactly subtle about ambition, but you're smart enough to know when to cheer for the winning team. And speaking of winners, here comes Toulon. Toulon is a fortified port on the southern coast that's fallen into the hands of royalists and British allies. The French government is desperate to retake it. You, recently promoted to captain and full of artillery enthusiasm, arrive with plans that make the grown-ups raise their eyebrows. You suggest setting up batteries in places no one else thought to try. You're basically playing tactical chess with live ammunition. The result, boom, victory. Toulon is retaken, and you're the hero of the hour. Mainstream historical fact, it's this victory at Toulon that gets you promoted to brigadier general, at just 24 years old. That's wild. Fringe tidbit, during the siege, you supposedly suffered from a skin condition and wore a scarf around your neck, not for fashion, but to hide the rash. Makes the dramatic war hero aesthetic slightly less glamorous, right? Now, back in Paris, you're starting to move in more influential circles. You meet Augustin Robespierre, younger brother of that Robespierre. Your politics still lean leftish, but your real loyalty is to your own ambition. You're charming the right people, writing treatises on military science, and watching your superiors like a hawk, waiting for them to slip, so you can move up another rung. But then Robespierre falls. The reign of terror ends with a guillotine, and suddenly being associated with him is a career-ending or head-ending move. You get arrested for about 10 seconds, and then plot twist, you're released. Lack of evidence, or maybe just dumb luck. But either way, you're free again. Historians still argue whether you were saved by your growing reputation or whether someone in high places saw potential in your cold, calculating brilliance. Either way, you dodge death. Again. Get used to that. In the aftermath, your career wobbles a bit. You're unemployed, broke, and spending too much time reading at the library. You even consider moving to the Ottoman Empire. Yep, seriously. You flirt with the idea of becoming a military advisor in Constantinople. Imagine that alternate timeline. But just when you're starting to wonder if your cannonballs have gone out of style, Paris decides it's had enough of angry mobs. In 1795, a royalist uprising threatens the government. Guess who's on speed dial? Enter whiff of grape shot. You're ordered to defend the city, and you do it with your usual flair. You station artillery at strategic points and blast the mob into retreat with canister shot. It's brutal, effective, and so swift that people barely have time to scream. Overnight, you go from a disgraced officer to Paris's golden cannon boy. Your reward, promotion to commander of the Army of the Interior and access to elite salons where powdered wigs are optional but ambition is mandatory. It's in this glittering aftermath that you meet Josephine de Beauharnais. She's a glamorous widow with sharp eyes, expensive perfume, and 2 kids. You fall for her heart, though historians still debate whether it was love or a very useful social ladder. Either way, you marry her in 1796. She calls you Bonaparte like it's a joke. You write her steamy letters full of battle metaphors. She writes back less often. So here you are, a general at 26, or hero, a husband. France is still spinning from revolution, and Europe's watching with raised eyebrows. You're just getting started. You're still in Paris, but not for long. The year is 1796, and your boots are barely dry from the wedding march when you get a juicy new assignment: commander of the French army of Italy. Now, don't let the title fool you. It sounds grand, but the army is in shambles. The soldiers are ragged and paid, and starving, and half of them think discipline is a suggestion, not a requirement. You arrive to find troops begging in markets and bartering stolen horses for bread. But here's where your genius starts to crackle like flint to steel. You don't ask nicely. You give fiery speeches. You reorganize the entire supply chain, promise plunder, and sudden miracle of miraculous your men follow you. They don't exactly adore you yet, but they sense something electric in your voice. Something sharp and sentimental. You're here to win, and that means bread, glory, and maybe a few extra gold candlesticks from Italian villas along the way. You lead them into northern Italy, against Austria and its many allies. It's a mess of city-states, dusty roads, and baroque fortresses that look like they were built to confuse mapmakers. But you've got speed on your side, and cannons, always cannons. Enter the Montenoc campaign. You split enemy forces like a hot knife through butter. You're outnumbered, outgunned, but not outplanned. You use mountains like chessboards, rivers like blades. And in a few short weeks, you turn a broken French force into a nightmare for the Austrians. Mainstream historical fact: you win more than a dozen battles in just under a year, often against better supplied and better trained armies. It's one of the most brilliant military streaks in history. But we're not skipping the weird stuff. Quirky tidbit: during the Italian campaign, one of your favorite tricks was seizing the local bakeries just for bread, but because controlling food meant controlling morale. One account claims you once staged an entire artillery show just to force a city into handing over its flour reserves. Yes, it's a bakery siege, with cannons. Welcome to Bonaparte logic. Back in Paris, word of your victory spreads like fire through dry leaves. You're not just a general now, you are a national obsession. Artists sketch your profile. Newspapers exaggerate your exploits. The government, still unstable and trying to look like it's in control, rides your coattails for credibility. But you're watching them like a hawk, already calculating how to leap from battlefield hero to political kingmaker. Meanwhile, in Italy, you go full empire builder. You don't just win battles, you reorganize entire territories. You establish the Cisalpine Republic, a puppet government friendly to French ideals. You collect art, documents, and occasional enemies. Museums in Paris start swelling with loot you've liberated, including, awkwardly, works from religious institutions. Historians still argue whether your motives were ideological or just opportunistic. Were you spreading revolutionary ideals, or just slapping liberty stickers on cities you wanted to boss around anyway? The debate rages on. But let's be honest, you're not exactly humble about any of this. You write dispatches to the government dripping with calculated modesty like, "Oh, I only won 6 battles this week. I'll try harder next time." You pose for portraits that make you look 7 feet tall, even though you're famously not. And the soldiers, they start calling you the Little Corporal, a nickname that sticks not because of your rank, but because you walk the lines, eat with the troops, and occasionally outmark them all. There's something magnetic about your half ruthless logician, half romantic enigma. You write Josephine long, rambling letters filled with longing, jealousy, and the occasional complaint about her not writing back. While you're reshaping Italy, she's hosting salons in Paris, buying dresses, and maybe, just maybe, entertaining a few other visitors. You hear rumors, and oh boy, do they sting. But more on that drama later. Let's talk about the siege of Mantua. This fortress is a beast surrounded by swamps, held by Austrians, and as stubborn as leftover lasagna. You lay siege not once, not twice, but 4 times, each one bloodier and more desperate than the last. At one point, The Austrians try to lift the siege with fresh troops, and you beat them back again. It's exhausting. Mud, disease, hunger, and a stench that could punch a goat in the face. But you win. Of course you do. And with that, you're the undisputed master of northern Italy. You even marched dangerously close to Vienna, rattling the Habsburgs into signing the Treaty of Campo Formio. France gains territory. You gain swagger. Josephine gains more dresses. By now, you're a living legend, but your ego, it's ballooning faster than a hot air dirigible full of self-importance. You've started editing your own dispatches before sending them back to Paris. You're not just winning battles, you're curating your mythology. And here's the kicker. You're only 28 years old. Pause and take that in. At 28, you've gone from unpopular Corsican schoolboy to national hero, battlefield strategist, and amateur museum curator with a knack for bakery sieges. The Directorate five-man government trying to keep France from collapsing into a puddle doesn't know what to do with you. They love your victories, but you're way too popular, way too ambitious. So they do the classic move, promote you and send you far, far away. Next stop, Egypt. Why? Because it's exotic, it's strategic, and more importantly, it's not Paris. But don't worry, we're bringing cannons. You're sailing across the Mediterranean now, the salty wind in your face and a bizarre assortment of passengers at your back. It's 1798, and your next adventure is Egypt. Not exactly a vacation spot unless you're into ancient ruins, relentless heat, and the occasional plague outbreak. Still, you're Napoleon Bonaparte, and you're not just bringing soldiers. You've brought along scientists, over 100 of them, mathematicians, botanists, engineers, artists, like a floating Renaissance fair with muskets. Why Egypt? Well, partly because you want to mess with British trade routes to India, get them off at the source, hit their wallet, but also because you're a sucker for glory. Rome had Caesar in Gaul, Alexander in Persia, so why not Bonaparte in Egypt? You dream of carving your name next to the pharaohs. Never mind, the local population might have a few opinions on that. Your fleet sneaks past the British temporarily, anyway, and you land in Alexandria. Boom! You capture the city in less than a day. Then it's a grueling march through the desert toward Cairo. Picture this: sand in your boots, sun like a blowtorch, camels that smell like bad cheese, and water rations that taste like regret. Your men are hallucinating mirages. Some even claim to see pyramids in the distance. And then you do. Real pyramids, just standing there like giant, ancient bookmarks in the desert. Mainstream historical fact. Before the Battle of the Pyramids, you famously say to your troops, "Soldiers, from the top of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you." Nobody knows if you actually said that or if it was post-battle PR, but it definitely sounded cool enough to print on postcards. The battle itself is a tactical masterpiece. You form massive squares like living Lego bricks of musket and bayonet and crush the Mamluk cavalry. It's glorious, gory, and over before sunset. Cairo falls into your hands. And now, you're not just a general, you're a self-styled liberator. You issue proclamations to the Egyptians telling them you respect Islam and come in peace. They're unconvinced. The language barrier doesn't help. Also, your troops are looting. That never sends a great message. But you're not just here for conquest. Your scientists get to work cataloging everything: plants, animals, hieroglyphs, wind patterns, water wheels. One of them even invents a new way to distill water using solar heat. You basically stage a science fair in the middle of a military occupation. Quirky tidbit: your savants, as they're called, are the ones who discover the Rosetta Stone. Yes, that Rosetta Stone, one that eventually lets scholars unlock the secrets of Egyptian hieroglyphs. The irony: you, the great conqueror, might be remembered longer for bringing along a few nerds with notebooks than for your military wins. Meanwhile, back at sea, disaster strikes. The British Navy, under Admiral Nelson, catches your fleet anchored in Aboukir Bay. The result? The Battle of the Nile. It's a total naval bloodbath. French ships explode, men drown, and your supply line is severed. The French fleet is obliterated. You weren't even there, safe inland, sipping something tepid in Cairo. Historians still argue whether this was pure bad luck or a massive strategic oversight on your part. Some say you gambled too far from your logistical tether. Others say you figured you'd win fast and leave before anyone noticed. Either way, you're stuck in Egypt now, and you're not happy about it. Soon, Cairo boils over. The locals rise up against your occupation in what becomes known as the Cairo Revolt. Your response, swift and brutal. You bombard mosques, suppress the rebellion, and leave behind streets quieter but also bloodier. You install tighter controls, including forced conscription and higher taxes. So much for that liberator image. Still, you press forward. You march east toward Syria, hoping to expand your influence. Gaza falls, then Jaffa, where you face heavy resistance and a horrifying dilemma. After capturing the city, you execute thousands of prisoners rather than risk releasing them to fight again. It's a dark stain on your record, and even you seem haunted by it. You reportedly pace the walls afterward, eyes distant, whispering to yourself. Then comes Acre. You besiege it for weeks, digging trenches, ordering assaults, watching your men wither from dysentery and despair. But this time, your brilliance isn't enough. The British are helping the defenders, and the walls hold. You try again, and again, but Acre won't fall. Frustrated, and sick literally, you catch something nasty. You turn back to Egypt. It's 1799 now, and your forces are ragged. You've lost thousands of men, your reputation's bruised, and home is calling. But then you get news. France is in chaos again. The Directory is wobbling, the economy is crumbling, and public opinion, a big, sarcastic shrug. That's all you need to hear. You leave Egypt in secret, abandoning your army to fend for itself. Josephine doesn't even know you're coming. You sail back to France like a Roman general returning from a failed but fascinating side quest. Quirky detail to end on. During your return journey, your ship is almost intercepted by the British Navy. If they had caught you, your whole career might have ended right there in a damp cell off Portsmouth. But they didn't. You slipped through the cracks once again. By the time you set foot back in France, you're a war hero, a scientific patron, and a man of mystery. The failures, glossed over. The victories, inflated. And you're about to pull off something that makes every coup in history look like amateur art. But first, time for a change of clothes. You've still got Egyptian sand in your socks. It's the chilly autumn of 1799, and you've returned to France under cover of darkness, quite literally. Your ship docks quietly. There's no grand parade, no cheering crowds. Just the creak of the gangplank and your boots landing softly on French soil. You're not here to celebrate. You're here to take over. France is, once again, a political circus. The Directory, that five-headed hydra of fragile egos, is wobbling on stilts made of paper and wishful thinking. The economy's a mess. Royalists are stirring, Jacobins are grumbling, and no one, not even the baker, trusts the government anymore. People are hungry for change. Or at least, for someone who can finish their sentences without debating it in committee. So, naturally, you decide it's time for a coup. Mainstream historical fact. You orchestrate the coup of 18 Brumaire, which is just a very French way of saying November 9, 1799. It's swift, it's slippery, and it's suspiciously bloodless for a French Revolution-style power grab. The plan is part theater, part chess match. You've got allies now like your brother Lucien, who conveniently presides over the Council of 500, and Emmanuel Size, a political operator with more schemes than a Persian perfumer has sense. They want a stronger executive. You want, well, you to be that executive. You march into the halls of power, draped in a general's uniform, sword clinking. You give rousing speeches. You shout about foreign plots and national emergency. The deputies, not convinced. Some shout back. One even grabs you by the collar. Another supposedly waves a knife. It gets so tense that your loyal grenadiers have to escort you out on account, says you're pale and shaking, which, if true, might be the only time in your life you visibly panicked. Quirky tidbit. While all this is unfolding, your mother, Letizia, is said to be sitting calmly at home, knitting. When someone asks how she can be so relaxed while her son is staging a coup, she shrugs and says, if it succeeds, he's a genius. If it fails, he's a fool. Thanks, Mom. Anyway, you don't give up. The next day, with troops now inside the council chambers, definitely not sketchy at all, you dissolve the legislature. Some members scream down with the tyrant as they're chased out by bayonets. You install a new regime called the consulate. It's technically a three-man leadership, very democratic sounding, but let's be real. The other two are decorative. You're first consul, and everyone knows what that means. From here, things move fast. You rework the Constitution slick, clean, and totally tilted in your favor. It's put to a public vote. The results? Suspiciously enthusiastic. Over 99% approval. Historians still argue whether those numbers reflect true adoration or some creative math from your new government's counting department. Spoiler, it's probably the math. But you don't stop with politics. You set your sights on stabilizing the country. First, the economy. You create the Bank of France, a central institution that brings order to the chaos of currency and credit. You establish a new tax system that actually collects money instead of relying on angry men with ledgers and pitchforks. Then, education. You create the lycée system, government-run high schools designed to mold future bureaucrats, engineers, and officers. You want young people to think logically, loyally, and preferably in uniform. And finally, religion. After years of revolutionary hostility toward the Church, you sign the Concordat with the Pope. Catholicism becomes recognized, but still under tight state control. Priests can preach, but you hold the lease. You manage to calm both the devout and the secular with a compromise that no one fully loves, but everyone can live with. That's your real talent, making people settle for your version of peace. Meanwhile, your public image is on fire in a good way. Artists paint you crossing the Alps on a rearing stallion. You were actually on a mule. But let's not ruin the aesthetic. Propagandists print heroic tales of your past battles. Even the coins start changing. You're not on the throne yet, but you're certainly acting like it. And what about Josephine? Ah yes, the Empress to be, still living lavishly and spending your money like it's found in her purse every morning. You're deeply in love, or at least, you were. But those rumors of her affairs haven't stopped, and now you're powerful enough to do something about it. You almost divorce her on the spot. You're so angry. You throw one of her letters into the fire and walk out into the rain, but she begs you to forgive her. She weeps. You relent. You always do. For now. Meanwhile, people start noticing how you treat her in public, formally, coldly, sometimes with a smirk that says, "I remember everything." She still moves in high society. You still wear the mask of civility, but something's cracked underneath. This love story, it's going to get complicated. Back on the national stage, foreign threats loom once more. Britain is still your nemesis. Austrian armies are growling in the distance, and a second coalition against France begins to form. Your response, classic Bonaparte, a dramatic military comeback. You head to Italy again, cross the Alps this time for real, and smash the Austrians at the Battle of Marengo in 1800. This victory cements your rule. It also gives birth to another round of Napoleon as invincible posters, souvenirs, and awkward ballads sung in Paris cafes. Now the French people feel secure, maybe even a little proud. They've gone from guillotines to goose-stepping parades in just a few years. And you're basking in it. You've made yourself indispensable. The people trust you more than any assembly, constitution, or slogan. You're not just Bonaparte anymore. You're the Bonaparte, the one who's going to bring glory back to France, crush her enemies, and maybe, even if no one says it out loud yet, wear a crown. Just one more leap. One more grab, one more stage to stand on, and this time, there will be trumpets. The year is 1804, and you're done pretending. You've played the part of first consul long and now governing behind a curtain, tiptoeing around the word monarch like it's a lit candle in a powder keg. But let's face it, you've been ruling like a king for years. You've made the trains run on time well, if there were trains, reorganized the government, patched up religion, fixed the economy, and turned your face into every French citizen's favorite profile. So now, you diss it subtly, delicately, with all the tact of a cannon in a teacup. It's time to wear a crown. How do you get there? You stage it beautifully. First, you create the illusion that it's not your idea. The Senate, full of hand-picked loyalists, helpfully suggests that you should become Emperor of the French, not King Emperor. Totally different vibe. One sounds medieval and dusty, the other Roman and fabulous. You let the idea circulate, let it gain steam, and then put it to a national vote. And surprise, over 99% of voters agree. Historians still argue whether this number was inspired by public admiration or a very generous interpretation of democracy. Mainstream historical fact. On December 2nd, 1804, inside Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, your crowned Emperor Napoleon I Pope Pius VII travels all the way from Rome to do the honors. But when the big moment comes right there at the altar, you snatch the crown out of the Pope's hands and place it on your own head. Boom! Symbolism alert. You want everyone to understand, your authority doesn't come from divine right, or papal blessing, or lineage. It comes from you. You made yourself. Josephine's there too, all decked out in gold and velvet. You crown her empress, and for a fleeting moment, the two of you look like the picture of imperial romance. But even then, behind the silks and smiles, you're already thinking about succession. She hasn't given you an heir, and that problem is starting to loom. Quirky tidbit. The whole ceremony is so detailed and stage-managed that you rehearse it several times beforehand like a play. You even practice walking up to the altar in full regalia with your siblings. One of them stumbles during rehearsal, and you snap. If you do that tomorrow, you're out. Nothing says sacred right like passive-aggressive family drama. The coronation transforms you in the eyes of the world. French nobles return from exile, eager to kiss your ring. Old monarchies clutch their pearls, muttering that the revolution has come full circle. And your people, well, most of them just want bread, peace, and fewer decapitations. But you're not just about the fancy titles. You're still working, still building. Your legal masterpiece, the Napoleonic Code, is finalized around this time. It's a complete reorganization of French civil law, streamlined, secular, and terrifyingly logical. Property rights, contracts, family law all under one roof. It sweeps away the cobwebs of feudal privilege and confusing regional laws. Even countries beyond France start adopting it. Some of its ideas still linger in modern legal systems today. But the code's not all sunshine. It rolls back some gains women had made during the revolution. Under your version of order, a husband has authority over his wife, and divorce becomes much harder for women than for men. Historians still debate whether this was pragmatic realism or deeply personal bias. After all, you do have control issues. You also reorganize the nobility. Yes, the same nobility that got chopped during the revolution. But yours isn't about ancient bloodlines, it's a reward system. Generals, civil servants, scientists, they all get titles. You create a new elite, loyal not to tradition but to you. Ironically, you do exactly what you once fought against, but in a very you way. Oh, and speaking of loyalty or not taking chances, you create a secret police force to keep tabs on critics, censors to trim unflattering newspapers, and a massive surveillance network. You don't silence every ageist enough to make sure people think twice before muttering about you at wine bars. But let's not pretend all this power doesn't look tempting. You start dressing the part. Golden laurels, silk robes, grand medals. You move into palaces, ride in carriages glittering like disco balls, and dine under chandeliers that could blind a modest god. Even your siblings get upgrades. You begin handing out crowns like party favors, brother to Westphalia, sister to Naples. It's a family affair, and you're at the center like the sun in your own solar system. Still, your eyes aren't only on Europe. You're looking across the Atlantic too, though one of your biggest miscalculations has already exploded in your face. Remember Haiti, yeah? In 1801, you tried to reassert control over the colony, France's most profitable jewel, after a successful slave rebellion led by the formidable Toussaint Louverture. You send troops, thinking it'll be easy. It's not. Disease, fierce resistance, and terrible planning destroy your forces. You lose tens of thousands of men. By 1804, Haiti declares independence, a first nation born from a successful slave revolt. It's a humbling defeat, and one of the reasons you decide to cut your losses and sell off another overseas project, Louisiana Territory. For a neat $15 million, you hand it to the Americans. The Louisiana Purchase doubles the size of the United States and gives them future bragging rights. You get quick cash and a chance to focus on Europe, where the real game is heating up. Because oh yes, the other powers of Europe are watching. Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia all start muttering about the Corsican problem. They've tried coalitions before, and you've smashed them, but they're not done yet. Another war is coming, and this time, the stakes are higher. But right now, in the candlelit halls of your empire, all is calm. You've made it from a windswept island to the imperial throne of France. You crowned yourself. You've rewritten the laws, rebuilt the nation, and reshaped its identity in your own image. Not bad for a former artillery officer who once got mocked for his accent. The world's about to test you again, but for now, you sit in your velvet-draped study, sipping something strong, maps unfurled before you. And somewhere behind your eyes, another campaign is already unfolding. It's 1805, and you've got the crown, the robes, the skeptical neighbors, and most important, life momentum. France is no longer just a country. Under your boots, it's an engine. And you're the conductor, the mechanic, and the guy pulling the horn chain all at once. But the other European powers aren't thrilled to see you puffing along like destiny in a gold-trimmed hat. Britain is fuming across the channel. Austria is sharpening its sabers. Russia is grumbling in the east, probably while knitting winter socks and plotting your downfall. So what do? You press forward. If Europe's going to push back, you're going to push harder. You decide to place the whole continentes, the entire map of monarchies, river valleys, and angry horsemen right in your proverbial pocket. It starts with the Third Coalition, a joint effort by Britain, Austria, and Russia to squash you like an ambitious croissant. They think they can gang up and end the Napoleonic dream. You, on the other hand, think it's a perfect opportunity to rewrite the rules. Mainstream historical fact, you deliver one of your most glorious performances at the Battle of Austerlitz, often called the Battle of the Three Emperors. It's December 2nd, 1805, exactly 1 year after your coronation, and you've just tricked the Austrians and Russians into attacking what they think is your weak flank. But it's all a setup. Like a magician pulling off a grand reveal, you unleash a crushing counterattack right into their exposed center. The result? A shattering victory. Austrian Emperor Francis runs home bruised. Russian Emperor Alexander pouts all the way back to St. Petersburg. You lose fewer than 10,000 men. They lose over 35,000. The coalition collapses in disbelief. You write home to Paris with just 2 words: the battle is won. Quirky tidbit. Before the battle, you survey the field and notice the thick fog covering your troops. You smile. This is the finest curtain I've ever seen, you say, knowing full well your enemies can't see a thing coming. Fog and flare your 2 favorite weapons. After Austerlitz, you do what any sensible emperor would: dissolve the Holy Roman Empire.